personalization, Neon, differences, advantages, known limitations, prompt engineering differently for Neon versus regular. Okay, this is actually super helpful because we could spend hours just talking about AI. So I will make sure we cover most of these questions. And if I don't, then make sure you like ping me in chat and we'll make sure we talk about it live today. All right, I see Peter giving me the thumbs up section. Should we just get started?
Yeah, I'll kick it off to you. Everyone's waiting on it. And the recording is in process. So
Awesome.
everybody, Josh, the head of education at Clay, thank you for doing this, man.
Yeah, of course. Always happy to chat about Clay and help people learn about new things. I see some familiar faces in Zoom already, so it's good to see some of y'all. This is actually well timed because we currently have a cohort of Clay running for education, and we just covered Claygent yesterday, and we're covering AI prompting today. So I see a few students in that cohort also in Zoom today, which we had overlapping office hours, so realized that a little bit late, but hopefully people can get value out of both from recordings. We'll see. So I'm going to set the stage for just a moment about Claygent, what it does. Hopefully most people here, it seems like I've interacted with it in some way. If you're completely new to it though, Claygent is our own breed of AI specifically designed to help you with web scraping, just-in-time information. The way I often describe Claygent to most people is it's like a really, really ambitious, all-knowing junior employee, which seems a little bit oxymoronic because it's incredibly powerful. It can go search any part of the web that you want it to with a few limitations that I'll talk about. But it's also incredibly context-free, which is a bad thing. So there's a little bit of prompt engineering required to make sure Claygent actually does what you want it to do. Otherwise, it's going to be really eager to help you try and get the results you want, but you might spend hours, I've seen people do this, frustrated, banging your head against the wall, trying to get Claygent to do what you want it to do and still getting false results. So we'll talk through today's structure a little bit. I'm going to walk through 3 of like my favorite examples specifically with Claygent Neon. I'm going to talk about what makes Neon different from the regular models and how to think about it. Feel free to drop questions in chat as we're going through it. Part of my goal is the faster I get through just like the little prepared bits I have to set the stage, the faster we can get into broader Q&A, have people come off mic. I'll even, praise be, try and do some things live if people have questions about doing things live. And we'll see how live demos work as they always do, but happy to try and help you guys better understand how to fit this into your go-to-market stack. Awesome. So I'm going to share a screen and jump straight in. All right. So I spent a little bit of this morning just thinking about like really what makes Neon specifically more interesting or better than other models. And to give you guys a little bit of context, when you come into Claygent in Clay, you've got a couple of different model options. So I can select Neon, which is the default that we recommend, or I could try and combine this web scraping infrastructure we've built for the agent with OpenAI's set of models or Anthropic's set of models. And we'll be adding even more models from Gemini, et cetera, in the near future. So you can really pick whichever model works best for you. Model selection is really about optimizing what results you're looking to get with your credit cost. So for example, the way I broadly think about Claygent is if it's doing a very simple 1 to 2 step task and it's just grabbing information that I know is already easy, visible, and present on a web page, in those types of situations, I'm probably going to defer to something like 4.0 Mini or Claude Haiku because it only costs 1 credit because those AI models don't cost as much to run. The minute I start to ratchet up one of 2 things, either the complexity of the query that I'm trying to run or the open-endedness of it, then I start thinking about more intelligent models because if there's ambiguity, room for interpretation, or issues in how it might interpret what your set of instructions are, you want a slightly smarter model interpreting what you want and executing on those use cases. So for the most part, I always rotate between Claygent Neon, and sometimes I'll test 4.0 versus Opus if the results aren't working as expected. My last piece of advice on model selection here, I always run Claygent on like 10 diverse rows of data to try and figure out which model, which format I need before I start scaling it to the rest of my data set. Because I don't want to burn through 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 credits every time I'm testing it. I'd rather test on a set of 10, maybe spend 20 to 40 credits on each run, and then iterate from there. Last thing before I show you guys some of the goodies here. Neon in particular allows you to format the results. So one of the prompt engineering hacks you have to put in, if you, let's say I switch this model to 4.0, I'm just going to confirm the model change and switch it here. You'll notice that everything is in the mission. So I have to then put all of my results and format the answers and the result reasoning the exact way that I want it. In particular, this is really difficult if I want to grab multiple pieces of information from one single search. So an easy example here, which I'm about to show you, 10K reports. There's a lot of information in a 10K report. If I don't have Neon, I could try and get Claygent to summarize different parts of the report and then separate them with a different character, and then maybe use an AI formula to put those different results in different columns so I actually have data interoperability. Excuse me. With Neon, though, if I come back to the Neon model here, we have some of that answer formatting and extraction. Here is a default. So actually, I may have just messed this up by switching that, so I'm not going to run it. But if I edit a different column here, for example, the summarizer, which I'll walk through in a second, you can see here, I'm actually asking Neon to extract different pieces of information into different result fields in my output. So for example, in this, all I have to do is sort of mention with the same keywords what exactly I want the AI to extract. From the 10K here, I'm looking specifically for top 3 company initiatives, top 3 technology initiatives or investments, and then how that technology is going to help the company achieve its goals for the year. And I can do something very similar on this 10K example here with competition and risks. So it's really the same prompt templated over, but instead of adding business objectives for what I want the Claygent to actually analyze, I'm asking about competitive risks, factors, all these other elements that otherwise I would be reading the 10K manually to try and extract. And the other last tip on how to use Claygent is that once you get beyond 5 different fields in what you're trying to extract, the results can vary, especially if you're asking it to do some interpretation for you. So I try and bucket it into discrete things that I'm looking to get from the research that I want. So to walk you guys through what this table is actually doing, we've got just a random set of like 15 companies that I know are large enough to be doing 10K reporting. And first things first, I'm just making sure I have a Claygent call looking to find the 10K URL. And you can see in here some of the iterations that have led to this whole prompt, right? Good prompting, again, is about setting the context up front. So what am I asking the AI agent to do? What do I need it to be good at? I don't want it to start calling on legal information or university information or doctoral information in finding 10Ks. I'm going to narrow it down specifically to this task. Then I'm going to give it within that context and task the information that it needs to go do the research. So this is part of what makes it really powerful in Clay. I can put the company name in here, the domain name in here, so that when this prompt runs for each row, it's going to do it custom to the company or row information that I have. And then the last 2 pieces of a really good prompt are really good sequential steps that account for all of your edge cases. So I know exactly how I would go manually find 10K PDF URLs with reliable results if I were to just go do this myself. I'm going to take that process and turn it into instructions here for Claygent. So if I was going to go instruct someone on my team to find 10K URLs for all these companies, I would tell them, first, Google search. Here's what you Google search in order to try and make sure that the result is in your top 5. If that doesn't work, look on the company website for investor relations. If that doesn't work, we're going to go to the Edgar database, which I know has all the 10K filings for all these companies and is a publicly accessible database. And if both of those methods still don't work, just try and find it. You're a smart person. You can hopefully figure this out with all the context you've gotten so far. Then my very last step here is output. So once I found that URL, I want to make sure that it's only returning the URL so I can then build these subsequent steps on top of it. So I'm telling it to return the answer here. If I can't find it, respond with unable to find, move forward. So from here, I then get the 10K URL here. And then I have those prompts I was briefly showing you guys earlier and happy to send after this chat as well to everyone on summarizing initiatives, summarizing investments, summarizing the purpose of both of those. So if I come in here for an example into, let's say, Datadog. Datadog's top 3 initiatives for this year are expanding the customer base because market penetration has been low, expanding customer base through broader deployments, use cases, and product adoption, and thinking better about technology leadership through new products and capabilities. And then I could even pull any segments of these text out into separate fields if I wanted to summarize, reference, intent, and copy, follow-ups, research that I'm giving to an AE or a BDR on my team. Now, if I want to drill down into what they're investing in, looks like functionality of the current platform, product development team, and those new products we were just talking about in those initiatives previously, and then optimizing infrastructure for speed and existing products. And so I'm not going to walk through every single cell here for all these columns. That would be a waste of our hour together. But just to give you guys an example of how powerful this is, the other way that I position Claygent in my head, because people get confused about when they should use data providers and when they should use AI web scraping, is that this really fills the last mile of data. So anywhere in your go-to-market org where you have people today currently doing Upwork level work where they're copy pasting manually, or you might even have Upwork people hired to do some of this data extraction for you, that's where Claygent comes really in handy for two big reasons. One, and I'm sure anyone that's done work with Upwork freelancers recognizes this, it's never fully accurate. A human can only do such a good job trying to manually copy paste data for, let's say, 1,000 companies at a time. You're going to get tired. You're going to eventually ship it in on one of them. The results aren't going to be what you want. So there's some level of inaccuracy that you deal with. And then the other big one is speed. There's a lot of lag time between I send a list to somebody to go copy paste the data, and then I receive that list. Sometimes it takes a day. Sometimes it takes multiple days. If you're prompt engineering and working with Claygent, you can get those results in a matter of seconds for a few rows, max maybe a few minutes for a few hundred to 1,000 rows. So some other examples of how you might build like a 360-degree profile of companies and people in an account. So here we have large public companies. Let's say, for example, we were going into an ICP that's a little bit smaller. I just grabbed 10 startups from the Wing Top 30 list here, grabbed their websites, and then this is where that answer formatting comes really in handy again. I've got stage, amount, lead, investors, summary. You'll notice I have the warning here that I have more than 5 fields, so it might degrade performance. But in this case, I wasn't really worried about it because I'm just asking it to extract information that I know exists on that research. It's just like the label for stage, how much money was invested, lead. There's not a whole lot of brain power required for an AI agent to actually just give me that information. And you'll see here in the results right now, from just company name, I've actually got a full picture of the funding stage, amount, lead investors, all investors, and the summary of the most recent raise here. If I wanted to extract a date into that, I probably could. You can just get creative and imagine the whole plethora of things that you might include here. And then the last example I'll drive through, and then we'll leave this to Q&A and some questions, is contact research. So to set the stage for context here, I, in a previous lifetime, worked very early at a sales development firm called J Jellyfish. And at that firm, I learned exactly how to do really good personalized outreach. This was back in 2019, so it's changed a little bit, but some of the core principles stay the same. Really good personalized outreach, especially to senior level type people at larger companies, often involves the process of one, relevance. So why are you reaching out? That's going to maybe be firmographic, technographic, account level data. 2, why you're reaching out to that person in particular. So that's going to be job title, function, what your value prop is as a company. Maybe if I'm doing Clay here, just for the sake of privacy data, I'm reaching out to GTM leaders and saying, oh, I've built a new type of GTM automation software that will hopefully help you save time, blah, 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 think about better optimizations, team rules, etc. But then the last piece that we used to have, again, a whole army of Upwork freelancers doing is personal contact level research. So we found that response rates would go up 10 to 20% if I was able to find some element of stroking the ego, right? If there's a podcast that you appeared on, a blog post, an article that you've written, an interview that you recently did, and I take the time to show you that I not only found that, but I referenced something unique and interesting from it, and I tied that into the rest of my messaging, we saw response rates go through the roof. And people would respond with something like, wow, you really did your research. I don't normally respond to messages like this, but you did the right. Someone even once told me stroking of my ego to actually get a meeting. And so I'm happy to take the call. That process, incredibly laborious, took a lot of manual time that we spread across a bunch of people. In today's world with Claygent, you can basically automate the entire process that we used to run over the course of a week in the matter of seconds. And that's what I'll show you here. So here I've got 10 people. Clay is just all of them because I didn't want to show anyone else's data on this live webinar, but you could imagine this being for other companies. First, I'm getting the LinkedIn profile URL because, and this is something else that came up in the cohort actually yesterday, a lot of people also get lost on which data points to start with. When I'm doing any sort of data building exercise, I often think about data as a puzzle. And if I'm solving a puzzle, the first thing I need to do is get my corner pieces and my edges outlined so I can then fill in the rest of the puzzle piece from there. When you're working with companies or with people, the best corner pieces on a company level are going to be the company website or the company LinkedIn URL. From there, you can try and back your way into almost anything else about the company on the internet. For people, it's going to be one of three things: either their name plus the company that they work at, which gives you LinkedIn profile URL with like 99% accuracy, or it's going to be their email. Because from their email, we can reverse our way into LinkedIn profile information about the person, etc. So once I've got that LinkedIn profile URL, I grab as much information as I can from it using our enrich person action. And I'm already here giving a 360-degree view of the individual. So this is actually not a Claygent use case, but just another really relevant AI use case. This prompt here is asking AI to basically take all the information from this individual's LinkedIn profile, because I've put the entire result in here, and give me the 3 most unique relevant bullets. And I've given it a little bit of what to consider in those bullets so that it doesn't just give me garbage back. If I even wanted to make this prompt better, because I was a little bit time pressed this morning, I would even rank order. Here's what I consider unique information. Maybe it's volunteering information first. Maybe it's awards second. Maybe it's skills and certifications third. And then it would get even more optimized. So to give you an example here, let's look at our founder and CEO, Kareem. The most unique elements of his profile: he does have a diverse background, very, very technical. He did found Frame, which was acquired by Sailthrough, and then now Clay. And he was actually VP of product at the Wall Street Journal and a program manager at Microsoft. Right, so those are 3 tidbits of information I've just taken from the LinkedIn profile. Again, I can hand this off to somebody on the sales team so that they don't have to go take that extra step to research the LinkedIn profile. They can just look at all the information they need just in time in the CRM. Or I could even take the extra step to start doing AI copywriting from this. Now, the other thing I've done here, and this is like a clever hack that I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek into, I've just used an AI formula to concatenate all of this person's previous experiences. So I didn't write that code. I had AI write it for me. Oop, something crashed. Live demos. Let's try and fix it. So now if I come back into that AI formula, I just asked AI to concatenate all the unique company names from this person's experience portion on LinkedIn, separated by a comma. And the reason I did that is because when I was thinking about the manual process we would instruct all of our Upwork army at J Jellyfish to go do for contact research, that's what we would tell them to do. It was like a 5-page document that said, first run this Google search. That Google search is first name, last name, company name, and podcast. Then run the same Google search for article. Then run the same Google search for panel. Repeat for article, interview, video, etc. Is if I can find something that you wrote or participated in at your current company. If I can't find that, I would still rather include something from a previous experience than I would to include nothing. So we also had this Upwork army going through and finding from someone's LinkedIn profile what their previous company names were, and then repeating those searches for all the subsequent company names if they didn't find enough research in the first batch. So I wanted that to be something I could feed into my AI prompt here, because this is what I call the JJelly prompt. It's an expert contact researcher. It replaces that whole Upwork army need that I was talking about. So I'm telling it exactly that we're looking for these types of thought leadership: podcasts, blogs, conference appearances, etc. Here's the person that we're researching. Here's their current company name. Ideally, I wanted to find at least 3 relevant things. And remember that we're never going to always find 3 pieces of thought leadership about everyone. People have limited to various digital footprints, but hopefully this does a good job. And I'll show you the results in a sec. But I kind of detailed that process I was just talking about, right, that we used to give all these people: search for their name and podcast, panel, interview, blog, article. Then I've given it some criteria here at the bottom. If you find 3 URLs, return them, and this is important, I'll get to this for Neon in just a second, in research 1, 2, and 3 below. If not, keep continuing the search with other parameters that you might find useful. And then the very last step, because I want this to be the order of priority, is that if you still can't find results for this person at their current company, try looking for them while they were at a previous company. Here is the list of all previous companies this person has worked at. And then the final step here is remember to only return those 3 relevant URLs, put those URLs in these different fields, and make sure that they're different where possible. And of course, here at the bottom, I have for Neon in particular, this is what makes Neon so special, this output formatting. So I've told it it's going to be a URL, and I want it to be in these 3 different fields. And then this is where I get really excited, because this is something that is just truly only possible in the AI world. So you can see here, research URL 1 is in research 1, research URL 2 is in research 2, and then research URL 3 is in research 3. Like I said, not everyone on our team or in this list has thought leadership about them. And so I actually know, even just because I know our team quite well, that these people don't have anything that I could find easily on the internet about them. So that's a good gut check for my prompting. Now, if I was giving this to a sales team or a sales leader, they would still have to click into every single research URL to figure out what the research about that person is about. That doesn't fully eliminate the manual research burden from the team. It largely accelerates it, but I think we can do one step better. So now what I'm doing is I'm going through that process that we had these Upwork, that 5-pager thing I was talking about before, and I'm having that Claygent model actually extract exactly what information I need from each research article, so I could port this over to the CRM. And once again, I can keep my sales or marketing team exactly where they need to be, which is just in one tool. So here you can see for each piece of research, and I'll walk through the prompt in a second as well, I'm asking Neon to grab 3 things. 1, what's the type of research? Is it a podcast, an interview, a profile, a blog article, something else? Number 2, who's the author of that research? Is it self-published? Is it an interview on another blog? Was it featured somewhere else? I might prioritize what research I use if I'm just a BDR looking at data based on the name, the status, the reputation. And then most importantly, 3, I'm having it actually extract, where possible, 3 quotes from the research. And if quotes aren't possible, it's just summarizing the research for me. So for example, let's go back to our founder, Kareem. He was recently on the First Round Review podcast, and it extracted 3 quotes actually from that podcast transcript. And I haven't looked at this yet, so you guys are seeing this first time as I am. You have to kind of understand how you work. So I've listened to this podcast. I can tell you for a fact that is something he says in it. This is something he's actually told us before as well, right? We're more like gardeners, not engineers. We plant seeds, we grow them. And then the real goal is to be able to do experiments, right? Who is the ICP? How do I know their ICP? What are the companies that are out there? So these are actually all valid quotes that it extracted from his article. And again, using a quote from research in some outreach to somebody, probably one of the most high touch ways you can signal that you've actually done some work or research to try and get their attention. And then let's look at one that doesn't have quotes. So let's look at our head of go-to-market, Everett. So in this, Everett was doing an interview that I haven't listened to, so I'm going to trust it for now, but we could double check this later, on Microsoft Fabric and Databricks for enterprise workloads on Azure. He then looks at data lake technologies, and then is on a podcast exploring the connections between Fabrics and Databricks. And knowing Everett's background, I do know that this is a topic he's an expert in, so at least I'm confident this is the right research about the right person. And then I've repeated this entire process for each piece of research that I found. So now I can see here for research 2, what's the type, who's the author, does it have quotes, does it have a summary, and the same thing here for research 3. So I've essentially taken what used to be a week-long process that we used to spend way more money on Upwork freelancers and time doing manually, and boiled it down into a table with some intelligent prompts that I can run today and get results in the next 5 minutes. So that's everything that I kind of had prepped to show you guys and talk through on Neon. It's kind of perfect timing at the halfway point. So would love to, I'll stop sharing for a moment, have people in chat. I think Peter has probably been helping me as I've been doing this. And maybe if Peter, you have any questions that were popping out to you while I was screen sharing, let's start with those, and then we can just dive into Q&A and keep this relatively conversational.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right? I think my Wi-Fi is kind of shoddy right now.
I can hear you all right. You're like a little splotchy on video. It's not doing it
Hello.
justice, but there you go. Okay. I think Peter's a little bit
Okay,
laggard.
I'll just start with audio.
Yeah.
Just first of all, are you open to sharing?
Okay, what I got from Peter is, am I open to sharing? And then he cut off. I'm going to guess one of two things is what he was about to say, either the prompts or the table. The table would include the prompts. And so the answer is yes. What I can do is I will just, the easiest thing to do here, I will include like a shared table URL. We will email everyone who attended this webinar with that shared table URL. And inside that shared table URL, you will get all the prompts that I have here for 10Ks, company research, and people research. Okay, and then I'm just going to assume Peter is out of action for a bit. So instead of just staring awkwardly at you guys for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try and make some sense of this chat. I really appreciate all of the kind words and enthusiasm. That makes me happy. I see a few questions here that I'm just going to start taking ad hoc. Number one, cost. So the cost here is credits. Neon is 2 credits, which is actually a good average between all the models. And that's easier for us to optimize because it's a model that we've built. The other models range from 1 to 4 credits. So both OpenAI and Claude have a model that is less intelligent, but very fast and very cheap. That costs 1 credit. There's also the more advanced models on both versions that cost 3 credits. And then Claude Opus in particular is the world's most expensive model at this moment. And so that costs 4 credits. And that's really just a reflection of what we get charged when we run that call for you. Let's see. Link to the table is coming in here. No worries, Peter. I see that post about taking it from chat. So I see a question about scraping LinkedIn posts and summarizing posts. The answer is sometimes, and this is actually a good opportunity to talk about some of the limitations of Claygent. The one thing Claygent can't do really well right now is access information behind a login, because it's not a dynamic web agent going to pages and taking actions for you. We're hoping to build something like that relatively soon. So stay tuned, but no promises. But right now, what Claygent can do really well is access any page that's publicly visible on the internet. So it can't go behind paywalls or password walls. For LinkedIn and LinkedIn posts, we have separate actions, just because, as you all probably know, LinkedIn is one of the most strict places to ever get data from. It's incredibly difficult. They don't connect with anyone via API. We've connected with a bunch of different providers in the backend to be able to try and get data from LinkedIn as a source. So if you have someone's LinkedIn profile, if you use that enrich person action I was showing, you will get every element that's possible to get from their profile. We have a separate action specifically geared for just finding recent LinkedIn posts. And then what I would do, this is a whole separate set of tables we could make, is you get the content from LinkedIn and you get the content from their posts in Clay. Now you have a prime opportunity to use AI on that content, but I would say it's sometimes reliable for getting that content from LinkedIn for you. All right. So I see a direct question maybe by accident on if we're planning to release best practices for different stages of target groups, like how to release out to SMBs, mid-markets, etc. We will probably be building courses for everyone across the spectrum on like SMB, mid-market, enterprise, non-LinkedIn, etc. I just stepped into the head of education role here very recently. And so we're working on building a game plan, but definitely keep your eyes peeled for a lot more education content coming by the end of the year. Okay, I see a couple of questions, just one in particular, how I split the answer. So I'm just going to share screen back for that. And then a few folks are asking if I can cover like some of the things that they're struggling with live. And the answer is maybe. So go ahead and like either paste in the chat the link to your table, because I can go in and imitate you. Don't worry, nobody else will be able to. And then we can try and do some workshopping live. I find that's the best way for folks to learn. And just know that it's going to be risky. So we'll see if I can fix it or not. The other thing that I saw in chat real quick was someone wanted to see how you do the answer splitting. So I'm going to take this research to detail and say 2 things on answer splitting. One, we've built the agent so that it should be relatively intelligent if you mention the same keywords like I did in the 10K part, where I said competitor detail, and then I name that field competitor detail here. It should link between the two. It's buggy. I mean, AI is only so smart. It's going to get better and better. But given where we're at with AI today, I always take care to try and explicitly tell it what field to return which information in the prompt. And then I make those fields named exactly the same thing. So for example, here, in analyzing the research, we've got categorize the research and research type. And I've even put it in quotation marks so it sort of feels like it's different. Then return the name of the organization in the author field. And I've even added this edge case, right? If the piece is self-published, just return self. And then return the summary. And because I'm just saying summary so many times, I just assumed it would get summary in there. But you can see the formatting here. So the formatting is important for a couple of reasons. One, you want to name the field the right thing so that the agent knows to put the data in that field. And then most importantly, too, you actually want to make the right field type selection. So for example, I should actually, this is a good learning for me and a good demonstration of how you need to iterate on prompts to get them to perfect. You need to make sure you, if you have a select field, have put in all the different categorizations you can imagine up front so that the AI doesn't hallucinate a selection you don't have. If I just made this a text field, it would give me a bunch of different hallucinations. If I make it a URL field where it's relevant, it's not going to give me random text around the URL. So that'll clean the URL piece in particular. And the other formats we have here are number, email, true, false. So if I wanted to flag whether or not data existed, I could do that. If I wanted to, for example, I've done this before in a different table for ESG reports, whether or not a company reports on type 1, type 2, or type 3 emissions. I don't really need to know anything other than if they do or they don't. That's where I'm going to select the true false flag. And then email, of course, if you're looking for emails, this is best on like a website with case studies or a website contact list or a conference list of attendees. You might want it to only scrape emails into that result for you. Awesome. I'm going to go back to not sharing the screen because it's easier to see the chat when I do that.
Hey, Yash, can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Peter.
Okay, great. Thanks for holding down the fort. I think I have better connection now. Just a couple real quick ones. You know that field where you brought in like the 3 LinkedIn points about Kareem?
Right.
Joel Duran asked, would that be 1 Clay credit or like 3? How would the credits work there?
Good question. So the easiest way to think about Clay credits is we're not charging you on the output. We're only charging you on the input because we're not really trying to profiteer on everything that we can. I think we just charge you wherever we get charged costs. So if I come back to that LinkedIn unique highlights thing, this is the one I believe he's talking about. So if I come and look at this column actually only costs 2 credits. Notice here that there's an asterisk because Opus costs an additional credit. I'm using Opus here again because it's a little bit more of an open-ended abstract task. I want it to have some sort of reasoning and intelligence to what's important and what's not. But no, it doesn't cost a credit per result. It just costs whatever the fixed credits are to run the model. I could even try and have it output 5 bullet points, and I would see how good it is at doing that. Typically, I don't want to over people with information, but the cost would not change.
That's great. Definitely answers that question. Fahad Kiani asked, this is less related to Claygent, but does Clay allow you to use the API where you can build a SaaS product on top of Clay? I believe the answer is yes. People white label our product.
Yeah, so you're more than welcome to do it. It's not the most ideal. Well, okay, I'll take that back. I think what we often frown on is like people who are building agencies that then will white label and like white service the product to a bunch of people. What we often prefer, and this is why we've built incentives to do it rather than punishments, is if you are, let's say, running an agency and doing work for 10 clients, yes, you have the option to just consolidate the work for all 10 of your clients into your one Clay space and then pass on the savings of Clay to those people. But the more effective thing from an organization perspective and now a cash perspective for you is if you refer those people onto their own individual accounts in Clay, you get 25% of their revenue for the first year that they're on Clay. So that should be a monetary incentive for you. And also I can just tell you from having run agencies in the past, it's much easier, especially as you scale, to manage a bunch of different workspaces and all of the complexities in that workspace than it is, especially given our UI, a really complex folder structure because things will get lost. So that's my one answer. To directly answer the API question, we don't natively allow you to like access the API. Like there's not an API that you can call to access Clay. Part of the reason is just our opinion on how the product has been built and where to prioritize engineering resources to make it better for you guys. Now, that's, we're not going to limit you from doing that. So there's 2 ways you can access Clay via an API. One would be you can throw any webhook payloads into Clay directly. So if you were using an API endpoint and then you just want to send data from, let's say, a custom tool or software to Clay, you can do that using a webhook. And then the other thing you can do here is you can use HTTP API calls within Clay. So part of the reason that we've built this initially is that if we don't yet have a native integration in Clay, we don't want you to be limited by what you can do. So you can build any of your get, post, put requests manually to any API here. You can also do your own custom API. And then my last answer is actually someone from Replit did this recently. If you want to build an API wrapper to actually ping Clay, you can. And so there's a whole blog post I saw yesterday on how to do this, and I'm happy to send this in chat right now for people who are interested.
Dang, there's so many good questions in chat. There's a few that are covering like templatizing and clonability. One, I think you did say you're going to share out this template. Two, if we create like a very sophisticated prompt, are you able to clone it? Are you able to save it and bring it back as a template?
Very good question. So first things first, I would just share this prompt right now or this workbook in chat if I could. But you'll notice I'm using a workbook here, which is a new feature we're going to be releasing soon just to organize tables. And I actually don't know how to share individual tables from this, so I'm going to figure that out after this. Maybe it's in actions. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I'll share each of these as individual templates at the end, don't worry. And then for templatizing prompts itself, which is also a good question, if I came in here, you'll notice here very subtly at the top, two things. I can browse templates. So we've sourced a bunch of templates of prompts that we've made. I'll be very honest with you guys. I think a lot of the quality of most of these prompts are relatively subpar. I myself do not use any of these templates really well. We are going through an exercise to actually update these to be a little bit more robust. But I do use these often as starting points. So you can come through here if you just like don't know what to get started in. It's really good for inspiration and really good for a starting point, but don't take it for granted. Make sure you add your own prompting on top of it. And if you really want robust templating, what I would do is, robust prompting. I use this hack all the time. I will generate a prompt using Anthropic's prompt generator. Let's say I said, generate a prompt for me to find 10K URLs using an AI web scraper. I could do a better job of giving it more context here, but even from this limited context, it's going to output, I would say like a 60 to 80% quality prompt for me to then go in and modify. So like we're seeing, and I think my belief is over time, a lot of prompting is going to be abstracted away, but this is one step to that journey and a little prompt hack that I would use. And if you don't have access to Anthropic, you can do the same thing in ChatGPT. I just think Anthropic has formatted this meta prompter a lot better. So that's one hack there. And then the other thing is you can save any of your own prompts as templates as well. So I could save this. You all will not have this flag, so don't worry about it. I could make a public template for everyone to just come access this prompt. But let's say I wanted to do like, which one is this? Claygent research finder finds research. And then I could just save this to my workspace and have this accessible to anyone in any column in any table anywhere else. The other last point on templatizing, you can share your own tables. So I just found that here, right? In Actions, share as template with people in your workspace. It's going to remove all the data from the table, but it's going to keep all of your column structure. So if you wanted to repurpose or reuse entire sets of tables across your team, you could do that as well. And then just to Devin's question that I'm just seeing in the chat, you can use a template you've saved, change it, and then save as new. Absolutely.
Another good question, Yash. What are like different media that this can ingest? Like, could we use a YouTube link? Like, how is it reading that podcast that you mentioned, or is it a transcript? Like, what can and can't it ingest?
Yeah, so what it can ingest is text and images. What it can't ingest is video. So for example, or audio. On this podcast URL, so let's take a quick second click into the information. If I look at research number 1 here, the reason it's able to get those quotes is because First Round always does a transcript of everything on the podcast here that you can see down below. And so it ingested this entire page, right? This is the whole transcript of the podcast. Now, there's other flows I've built that I could find in the past as well, where you can have Claygent look only for audio podcasts or YouTube interviews. And then there are separate APIs you can call to transcribe a YouTube video or a podcast if the transcript isn't readily available. And then what you would do, so the steps here would be step 1, find audio or video object. Step 2, use like listen notes is one of my favorites for finding podcast transcripts. Speak.ai is another one that does some transcription decently well. There's a bunch of tools out there. Or Speak AI, maybe it's not Speak.ai, speakai.co. There you go. There's a bunch of tools for transcription out there that you can ping if you really need to do that level of research. And then once you get the transcript back from that tool, I would just feed that to a regular AI prompt for summarization again. It's a good question. It can't. Claygent itself, though, will not be able to parse audio or video yet.
Okay, great. Let's do a couple speed rounds. Isaac Marks asks what the difference between Neon and Claygent are, and is it mutually exclusive from Claude and OpenAI? Like, how would you bifurcate that or
Correct.
delineate
So
those?
Neon is not a model used by OpenAI or Claude. It's like a custom model that we've built with like a provider on the back end that is specializing only in agent development, right? So the way that Neon is different is in 1, the functionality, and 2, the ability to like parse these answer results right now. There's a lot more functionality that we will hopefully be building into Neon as progress on AI agent technology in particular progresses. Now, the reason that's different from OpenAI or Claude is because 1, it's not using the baseline of those models in its intelligence, right? It's using some sort of ensemble model that I can't reveal because it's proprietary to the company that we work with. And 2, it is going to be more custom built to the kinds of tasks that an agent is going to be good at. So like step 1 on this journey that we're excited to release with all of you guys is this answer formatting, answer bifurcating. That is just not possible if you're just adding OpenAI or Claude onto like a base agent model.
Yeah.
So, 2 and 3 will maybe be parsing different types of logins, maybe going behind password logins, maybe parsing audio or video, some of the questions you raised today, but TBD.
Yeah. So it sounds like the way I would think about it is Claygent's the vehicle, and then they're the different engines.
Yeah.
Neon being our proprietary one. Michael Upton asks, can Claygent crawl an entire website to find info, or is it just one URL? Like, can I go through the different sitemaps, or is it just the landing page?
No, you can. So this is actually worth looking into, right? I gave Claygent a really complex series of steps. It's going to, and this is like the principle of an agent model in general. So what the agent does that's different from your regular ChatGPT style, or like ChatGPT, the word vomit. ChatGPT style AI is very like, I send a message, I receive a response. It's one directional and limited. The addition of agents, which you'll see in other places on the internet too, is that when I send the message, the agent actually does some processing and interpretability on the message to figure out, okay, this is a project. There's a series of tasks that I need to perform. And then as the agent itself is running, it may even decide that from the results it's found, it needs to add more subtasks to completely finish your objective. So that leads to 2 things. Number 1, you can see here it took 16 steps to find all of Kareem's research. So literally went all the way through here. Another benefit to using Neon here is that that's only going to cost you 2 credits. If you use OpenAI or Claude, we're going to charge you whatever the AI backend charges us, right? And so that might even be like for something that's taking 16 steps, I've seen it cost $50 before. I can tell you
Wow.
two credits is cheaper because it's basically every single time that it takes a step, pinging the AI model again and again, and those are different levels of complexity. But last thing I'll share for you guys there is I'm not going to do this on an existing one because I don't want to mess it up. Let's say if I was adding Claygent in here and using 4.0 as a model, you can cap your cost. So you don't have to worry about it going unleashed or unreined. But you can see we cap it at even $1. Like I've seen runs go up to $1. So another benefit again of just using Neon in particular.
This is a good question. Murtaza Saeed, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, asked, this is great. In a nutshell, how expensive would it be to run this use case for 10K leads? It's like finger in the air. Do you have a sense of how many credits that might be?
I don't even have I can give you an exact number. So 1 Claygent column, 1 AI column, 1 LinkedIn column. So this is 2 credits. This is 1 credit, 3 credits. This is going to be 2 credits. So 5 credits, 7, 9, 11, 13. So each row in this table costs 13 credits. And I can dial up or dial down that if I want less research. But if then I take 13 credits by 10,000 leads, that's going to cost you 130,000 credits.
Cool. Let's see. We can both play the scrolling game now. A lot of excitement in chat when you said you would share the table.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. By the way, I see Ross asked about the cost of a credit. It can vary from
Yeah.
7 cents to a credit on the starter plan to we discount the credit cost as you're on higher volumes. If you're on one of our pro plans, which is what I standard think about for anyone doing meaningful work on Clay, it's about a penny, 1.2 cents, I believe, a credit, 1.3 maybe.
Yeah. And just to confirm, everybody, this recording will be shared out along with Yash's resources. And we generally have been posting recordings to the Clay University YouTube channel, which Yash, I spun up a YouTube channel for all of these kind of webinars.
I was just going to
FYI.
say, I'm hearing about it, so that's great.
Yeah, yeah. We can rename it something else too, but just the repository for webinar recordings.
No, I love it. Yeah. You can daisy chain Claygents together. Absolutely possible. We've answered multiple pages. What'll also help us here, if you've asked a question already that hasn't been answered, just repost the question, and then that'll be an
Yeah,
easy
let's do that.
that. James, in terms of how soon you can expect the table, Peter, I'm going to give you the 3 shared table URLs after this call. Do you think you'll be able to send that out today or tomorrow?
I would say I could do. I'll give myself a little bit of time and say by tomorrow morning. The recording just takes like a little bit of time to download and stuff like that.
Perfect. Perfect. That's good to know. Okay. So let's do end of day tomorrow at the latest. You guys will have recording plus shared table URLs. I'm going to answer some of these questions as they're coming rapid fire now. Can you use Clay to identify Tam and Sam? Yes, you can. My one warning I give everyone trying to use Clay to like boil their Tam or their Sam is that really the approach you want to be using to find Tam and Sam? And like most companies, like even large public companies, never go after their Tam or their Sam, right? Like if you talk to like a marketing or a growth marketing person at Apple, which I'm thinking of a conversation I had a few months ago, you have your TAM, you have your SAM, and then you have your ICP. And what you want to do to be able to penetrate SAM and TAM is you want to keep iterating on your ICP until that ICP grows and you get adjacent use cases. And then eventually you want your ICP to be the size of like your SAM. And then eventually you want your SAM to be continuing to iterate on trying to get to TAM. But like no company ever hits their entire TAM. Otherwise, you'd have monopoly issues.
Frank Baronis has a great question. Preferred models for different tasks. Research and synthesis versus creativity, messaging for outbound. Like, do you have a sense of what models you would use for what?
Yeah, so I default to using Neon for anything that's like research multiple object extraction. I default to testing on Haiku, I believe is the Claude model, or 4.0 Mini, whichever the cheaper ones are. If it's extremely simple, like go to X page, find Y information. And then for anything that requires either more creativity or complexity, they're basically the same thing when it comes to AI. I'm going to default to like an Opus or 4.0 because those are the most advanced models we have and they perform far better than the other ones.
Yeah. Josh Bergen asked, is it cheaper to buy more Clay credits and use Claygent Neon or use your own API key with GPT-4o Mini? I think, Josh, I'll kind of take some of Yash's thunder here. It kind of depends on what you're using it for. I would tinker with it if you have API keys. People quickly develop their own opinions, it seems, on what they like using for what.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it just depends, like we were talking about earlier on the credit pricing, what plan you're on. So if you connect your own API key and use it, so 2 things. One, if you connect your own API key, you can't use Neon because Neon doesn't have an API that you can access. It's our proprietary model. So you'd have to use either OpenAI or Claude. And then the other thing that we've done is like, if you're doing a really complex task, say for example, that research step I showed you guys, if I went directly to the OpenAI API to do that, I'm guaranteeing you it would cost me somewhere between $0.50 to $1 for all those steps. You would actually arbitrage on credits there if you were spending on credits because 2 credits is going to be about, even on a starter plan, 13 to 14 cents. So you can sort of optimize based on the complexity of task, whether or not you should use your API or use our credits.
I love this question from Maxime. If I'm targeting VP of customer support and I want to browse the articles in the knowledge base to guess the most common technical questions, the technical issues the customers face. Can Claygent Neon do that?
Yeah, you know, this is a good example for let's try it live. Maxime, do you have like 3 to 5 people in mind or companies in mind? We can just do companies for a moment so you don't have to give people.
Oh, this is exciting. All right.
Yeah, let's do like 5 companies. Yeah, Maxime, send me 5 companies. I'm going to screen share and let's see if we can do this live. Because the answer to your question is yes, it can do that. As you saw in the screen share before, we are getting like 16 steps and it's traversing 16 pages to find research here for Kareem.
Yeah.
So while Maxime sends me that information, I'm going to just show
Yeah.
everyone.
And let's wrap it up with this live demo. I think really appreciate the questions, guys. Feel free to ask me in Slack if none of this if a really burning question wasn't answered. But Yash, take it away.
Yeah, let's do it. Company URL works too, Maxime, because we can find the knowledge base URL from that. But if you have knowledge base URL, just send me those and we'll show you a simpler one right now. And then, yeah, like Peter was saying, if you didn't get your questions answered today, I'm also in Slack. Just like tag Peter and myself. Peter will route anything to me because he's wonderful at doing that as well if he needs it. And we'll make sure we get everyone's questions answered. So let's do knowledge bases. And then I'm going to do, okay, so let's just do company URLs here. So I'm going to speed run this. So company name. And the company names are going to be SalesLoft. And we're going to do Outbound. Do you mean Outreach potentially? I don't know, or maybe there's a company called Outbound. There probably is. I bet there is. Yes, Outreach. Okay, cool. Glad that I was on the right track there. Okay, so first, what I'm going to do here is actually just write a quick Claygent prompt to try and find these company domains and their knowledge base URLs. And actually, this is a good thing to try and show off in Neon. Find me the company website for company name and return it in the website field. Then find me the knowledge base or documentation for that company and return it in documentation. Let's see how this like very simple prompt does, because I'd probably make this a little bit better if I had more time. But we'll do website and documentation. Let's call this one website. Let's make this a URL. Let's call this one documentation and also make this a URL. Save, run. 10 rows. And then while that's running, just because it can sometimes take a few seconds to a minute, I'm going to try and build my prompt for the knowledge base one as well. Let's come over here, add enrichment, do Claygent. Yeah, so let's try this for a moment. I'm actually going to say, let's use this little hack as well. I am trying to write a prompt to extract the top 3 knowledge base articles that I believe a VP of customer support might face at a company. Help me write a prompt that will extract each of the top 3 articles found into result 1, result 2, and result 3 fields. So the one thing I'm noticing as I'm trying to speed run this, no, I don't want to leave. Let's copy this before it runs. Sure, maybe I have to leave. The one thing that I'm noticing as I'm running this is that I might want some specificity on like exactly how I want to be categorizing like what 3 issues matter the most. Like, do I want to just pick 3 things that I think from the knowledge base are really important? Do I want to categorize that based on like users trying to use it? Do I want to analyze the Slack community? Do I just want to pick 3 random ones? I don't really know, but I think that's worth thinking about to make this a more worthwhile task. But in the meantime, what we can do here, so you can see Neon already put in websites for all these companies and documentation for all of them. That is actually, I believe, correct for all these. That's awesome. And then now I'm going to take that prompt that I just found here and pick 3 knowledge base articles. I'm just going to copy paste it. I'm going to do, here's a prompt you can use to extract. Okay, so I don't care about that in the prompt context. And I'm going to say, you are an AI assistant with expertise in customer support and management. Please identify and describe. These articles should address common challenges, best practices, or information relevant to the role. For each article, provide. Yeah, so I'm going to make this simpler for now. We could do this. I'm going to say, return the first article you find in result 1. Return the second article you find in result 2. return the third article you find in result 3. And so I could get into formatting exactly what it tells me about each of these articles, probably worth doing, but for the sake of time, I'm going to remove it. Please ensure each article is distinct, covers a different area of customer support, not leadership. This is fine. The knowledge base, I want you to select 3 articles from is documentation. Make sure to first research all the docs possible before selecting your top 3. I'm going to come in here, add 2 fields, call this result 1, add a URL here, call this result 2, add a URL here, and then result 3, you guys see where this is going. And I'm going to save, and run. Let's see what this outputs. We've got 2 minutes for it to run. I'm guessing that this one is going to take a little bit more time to run because I told it to crawl the whole knowledge base. So, AI is only as fast as AI goes as well. And sometimes you have to also recognize, I'm just going to talk while this is running, that if you've told AI to do a lot, it is going to take a little bit more time to run. So here's what's interesting. We got 3, let's see what the first 3 results for LLMlist were. We have a blank URL, it's not working. So there's some nuancing that I'd have to add to this prompt probably. And like what I would do here to figure this out is we've got developer.lemlist.com. That works. And so what it's actually trying to get here are probably a few things that don't exist anymore. So I may have to fine tune exactly what the URL response is. This is the hallucination some people were talking about. But for a few of these, I'm hoping it's going to work now that it's doing it. So yeah, technical support request via outreach portal. For outreach, we have best practices for contacting technical support. And so this makes sense, right? The last thing I'll say as we wrap up this webinar, notice that the 3 URLs it gave me are all about technical support, because that's the thing I mentioned most in the prompt as I speed ran it. If I wanted to, and this is what I flagged in the prompt that I was writing, actually try and surface 3 things that my company could help this VP of customer support with, that's the thing that I need to add to the prompt. And there's probably some fine tuning around, we got the right documentation URL for LLMlist, but maybe I need to tell it to not look at API docs because that's what this is, right? I want it to be customer support documentation, not just a general knowledge base. So all of these are the things that I would fine tune to make this prompt better, but at least we answered the core question, which is yes, it's possible. So that's
awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks so much for that speedrun, Yash. Everyone, digital round of applause for Yash. Please stay tuned for the recording and the resources we'll send out by end of day tomorrow. And if you tinker with this and have some interesting thoughts or use cases, good or bad, tag us on LinkedIn, tag Clay, and then you can also ask in support in our community Slack, tag me and Yash, and we'll get back to you on this as well. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.